One of the more interesting, controversial parts of this Sephardic history is Sabbatianism. The Jews always were lured to messiahs, essentially false messiahs. So after the Spanish expulsion, there was a lot of pressure on the Jews. There was a lot of optimism. There was a lot of despair. You had the Chmelnytsky riots in Eastern Europe in 1648. There were all sorts of signs in these mystic communities. The communities weren't only rabbinic, they were Kabbalistic communities, that this is the end of days. There's going to be some redemption. There's going to be some messianic era. So there were, before Shabtai Tzvi, there was Shlomo Molcho and David Reuveni, and these eccentric figures, they razzled the populations. And of course, it was a threat. It was a threat for rabbinic Judaism. So Shabtai Tzvi wasn't just a messiah for the area or Sephardic Jews. In fact, it was a tremor for the whole Jewish world. The idea is the Messiah is going to come, and everyone's going to go to Israel, and we're going to rebuild the temple, and it's all going to be supernatural. But what happened was, you had this charismatic, very eclectic figure, Shabtai Tzvi. We think he was actually born in Patras, might have been from an Ashkenazic family, actually, and he wandered around. He lived in Izmir for a while. He went to yeshiva in Gaza. He was persuaded by someone named Nathan Ashkenazi in the yeshiva in Gaza that he was the Messiah. And there are a lot of different narratives. I claim that he was promoted and lured to be the Messiah through a following in Jerusalem. But so what happened was, in Salonika, Shabtai Tzvi would go from community to community and attract followers. In Salonika, in the Mograbi, the synagogue of Jews from North Africa, he had 3,000 followers. And so he created a tremendous frenzy and a tremendous abrogation for Jewish law. So in this synagogue, for example, on Tisha B'Av, which you're supposed to mourn the temple, he made it a festivity and canceled the fast day. He had about 5 different wives. He had problems of, being sexually potent. He got divorced. He married daughters of his followers, and he had a ceremony where he married a Torah scroll. We don't actually know about any descendants he had, and it's possibly had maybe 1 or 2, but we don't know anyone who carried on this legacy in terms of a blood relative. But so eventually in 1666, he's declared the Messiah in Izmir, and that's a threat to the Ottoman Empire. So the Sultan orders him to come to the capital and say, if you're the Messiah, you have to make a miracle, So Shabtai Tzvi, of course, couldn't make a miracle, and the Sultan said, I give you 2 options. Either I'll execute you, or you have to convert to Islam. So he converted to Islam, and he was jailed in a series of places in Turkey, and then he was exiled to what is today Montenegro. He had a tremendous following. This was a threat to rabbinic Judaism, to Judaism. In Salonika, boys who were 11 married girls who were 9. People sold everything, and they're waiting at the port to go to Eretz Yisrael, and nothing happened. They lost their whole livelihood and possessions. And the Salonican and Sephardic Jewry was in a state of decline for 200 years, in a state of mediocrity. There were 3 different groups of followers of Shabtai Tzvi who, after he converted, in the aftermath, in the decades after, they converted to Islam, but they remained Jewish and Sephardic and Ladino speakers on the inside, and mystics. When the 300 families or people converted to Islam, were followers of Shabtai Tzvi, after 1683, Okay, their leader was Yaakov Karido, formerly philosophe, whose last name means beloved or endeared, and was the brother of the second wife of Shabtai Tzvi, and it was believed that he received the spirit of Shabtai Tzvi. Yaakov Chelebi strengthened his authority and the perception of him as the deity as the community evolved, but his authority began creating dissent amongst the believers. Some of the Sabbateans who remained faithful to Judaism were forced out of Salonika due to his pressure. So, despite the inner tension, the community stayed together until the early 1680s, when it was divided into two subsects. At the beginning, all the Sabbateans were known as the Maminim, or the Muminler. But after the first split, Yaakov's group became the Yakubis, and the rest continued to be known as the Maminim, or Izmirlis, those followers who had converted in Izmir to Islam. There was dissent to the Yakubis amongst Mustafa Chelebi and the former Rabbi Baruch Cunio. So Cunio had been an earlier believer and companion of Shabtai Tzvi, and he represented the strongest voice. He was a clerk in a Jewish religious court and a presiding judge, a competent scholar and Kabbalist who developed a new and extreme system of Sabbatean doctrine. In 1714, the Yakubis settled major issues, but the Maminim, Mustafa Chelebi's group, were still in turmoil with regard to the question of leadership and establishment of new principles. Mustafa Chelebi and Osman Baba, Baruchia Russo, were the community's leaders and appropriated the theology of the Second Coming, which was formulated by Nathan of Aza and Cardozo. Several community members also believed that Osman Baba, also known as Osman Agha, like the elder, and Osman Bavep, literally meaning door, possessed messianic qualities and that he was no other than the reincarnation of Shabbatai. So the second coming of the Messiah still didn't occur. Mustafa Chelebi proclaimed that Osman would assume the role of Messiah in 1716 on his 40th birthday. The age 40 is symbolically important both in Judaism and Islam. Shabtai declared his messianicship at the age of 40, and the Prophet Muhammad also started his mission at that age. Okay. Though disillusioned with each other and with yet another failed prophecy, Osman Baba's followers remained loyal. Just as the first Messiah, Shabtai, had disappeared from sight, so had Osman Baba gone into occultation. The death, according to the party of Ibrahim, was the final proof that Osman Baba was a human being. But beyond this, they wanted to prove definitely to the believers that Osman Baba had been a false Messiah. Ibrahim is reported to have said, "If you insist that he is the Messiah, let's go and check out his grave. Should his body not decompose and rot, then I will withdraw my claims." Osman Baba's followers thought that it was a disgrace to dishonor the body of the Messiah simply because of one crazy man. But Ibrahim was persistent. At the end, he was able to convince the community to examine the grave. Since both sides were suspicious of each other's intentions, they consented to having the Yakubi referees oversee the examination. Representatives of each side, Hassan Aya and Konyo Aya, Mustafa Chelebi, and the referees opened the grave and found that his body had been decaying with a terrible smell. They took the ring off his finger and brought it to a meeting as proof that they had opened the grave. That event caused a new split in the community. With this third and final split, the three subsects began to solidify in the 1720s. So you have the Izmirlis, you have the Yakubis, and then the new sect became the followers of Ibrahim Ayalilar, or simply the Kapanjis. Osman's sect became known as the Karakash sect. So the former Izmirli became the Karakash. And then you had, so the new group is the Kapanji. So again, Yacobi, Kapanji, and Karakash or Izmirlis. The Yacobis are the most insular, as I told previously. So all these subsects assumed different names in the coming centuries. Those that remained loyal to Osman's party developed new principles around the cult of Osman Baba. Again, Osman Baba is the one who's the head of the Izmirlis. So he left 3 sons and 4 daughters behind, and his place was taken by Abdurrahman Effendi. So the tomb of Osman Baba became a place of veneration, a site of memory for the believers. According to a well-established tradition, the members of the Karakash sect, the name subsequently given to Osman Bey's group, Osman Baba's group, kept an empty bed with a green light next to it in their house so that Osman Baba will have a place on his eventual return. In this complicated evolution, so you had the Izmirlis, the original founders, then you had the followers and the descendants of Yaakov Karizo, who were the Yacubis. And then because of there was a split within the Izmirlis, you now have the Kapanjis. The Kapanjis, as I said before, were a wealthy group in Salonika, and they're all separate, and they all evolved separately. So today, we don't really have contact with the Yacubis. We have a lot of contact with the Izmirlis, the Karakash, especially in Istanbul, and you have the Kapanjis. The Kapanjis assimilated much more. They were wealthier, but they were much more loose in terms of their Sabbatian, ritual and practices. And today, on Facebook, you can go and communicate with Berry Kapanji. So that, to clarify again, so you have the Izmirlis, you have the Yacubis, and the Kapanjis. Again, the Yacubis are a very, very insular group. We know about some of their burial, but they are totally closed off to the outside world and closed off to the other Dudme.